We're going to start doing these podcasts a little more regularly. Trying to do them, I think, Luke, weekly, bi-weekly, something like that.
Yeah.
And Luke's going to kind of help out, push these through. So we're going to try and get you guys some more of this content. We've been getting a lot of great feedback on doing this kind of thing. So today I'm actually pretty excited because I think this will be probably one of the biggest ballers I've ever talked to.
I don't know. That's
a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions. Is that right? 800, 600 million, 800 million. It is confirmed.
Yes.
It's confirmed whether there is a sighting. Is that?
But as I told you over the weekend, compared to others, I know I'm a small fish in the pond.
Yeah.
It depends on where you're swimming.
Yeah. Well, so just confirmed he is on track to do 800 million this year. I probably can confidently say that you're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest spender in ad leaks. I know some people that do close to 100 million, 150, 200, but nothing near what you're doing. So very excited that you're taking the time out of your busy day to get with us and kind of go through some of this. So I guess I'd just like to hear a little bit about you, how long you've been doing media buying, how you got started, and how you transitioned into doing what you're doing today.
Sure. I'm going to age myself saying this. I've been doing media buying almost coming up on 20 years.
Okay.
So I did not start as a marketer. I think I always had an affinity. I grew up in Sri Lanka. So a lot of people, that's where my accent is from. But I've been in the US for about 20 years now. I have always had a knack for marketing. I didn't understand it was marketing back in the days. It was, like every high school kid trying to hustle. So I started as the wrong side of the business, pirating CDs. So a lot of people who doesn't know what a CD is, back in the days, there's no iTunes, no streaming. So me and my buddy, that was our hustle. But what that taught me without really realizing is understanding how to talk to people and understand what they need. So if anyone asks me why, or what I can say attest to my successes, is that I am more conversational. I don't think that, I know everything. I'm always trying to learn from others. And that's one of the reasons I'm even in at leaks, is that I learn a lot just listening into what others are doing. And then I'll go into my little lab and test it. I'm probably the only, at least as far as I'm concerned, one of the very few C-level executives still buy media. Even when I was at Bidalgo a few years ago, I will be in board meetings, then I'll be in front of my, computer opening up, buying media, because that's a skill. The more you practice, the more you learn. So, exactly. So how I got started into media buying is by necessity. We brought our first startup to the US at a very bad timing when the very first dot-com bubble burst. We were literally lucky enough that a week before everything went down, this was back in 99, 2000, we just signed a deal with a company called Seattle Labs out of Seattle. We were based in San Jose, California. I'm right now in San Francisco. And the deal they gave us was we were selling a SaaS product that's very similar to what Google Studio, Google platform today is, email, Gmail, all that stuff. We were trying to do that for mobile phones back in 99. We were a little too early for the market. People didn't really understand why somebody would text, write a message, or go and try to use something on the phone instead of calling. So we signed a deal, but the bottom fell out. So me and the two other founders were basically, we had money. We could have either taken the money, went home, or we could have tried to figure something out with us. It's in our nature. It was our baby. We didn't want to lose it. So we literally went and just kind of ping people on the websites, email, hey, how can I get our product in front of users? Because we were confident if someone actually used our product, they will buy. And that was back in the days, we were trying to sell it to ISPs, basically internet providers, the Comcast of the world. early years, right? That is what introduced me to affiliate marketing. That I understood I don't really have to go and throw internet, banners online. Back then, everything is based on banner buying. I can actually give someone a percentage of my media in return for all their hard work, right? So that was great. That allowed us to stay afloat despite all the downturn in the market. And then I decided to go back to college. I graduated in Sri Lanka, but I didn't really have a US degree. And back then I thought that's needed. Within 3 months of, and got into Stanford. And within 3 months of being at Stanford, I realized this is not for me. But what we did was, with my roommate and I, we started selling things on eBay. So we went from understanding affiliate marketing, how that's working, and then kind of coming into eBay, which is direct to consumer. And this is interesting, 20 years later, things are coming back again where direct to consumer is the big thing, right? So that's how I got into marketing. How I got introduced to Facebook was maybe about 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. I was working with a client, a big brand. They wanted to buy 10,000 likes a day. I didn't know how to do it, or I didn't understand how to scale it. I found this ad on Craigslist, this small agency called Spruce Media. I don't know if you guys have heard about them. They were like the early adopters of Facebook marketing. They had a nice little platform, and they were buying media for companies like Zynga and a few others. And I reached out to one of their account managers, I think, at that point. I think he's at Facebook now. Reach out to him and said, "Hey man, this company wants to pay me a bunch of money. I need to buy likes. Can you teach me how to buy media on Facebook?" And I showed up next day, and they thought they were interviewing me to hire me as a media buyer. But I showed up with 10 grand, wanting to spend 10 grand a day, and they just freaked out. But the good experience there was, it really taught me the fundamentals of media buying, right? How to understand data, how to come up with creative ideas. Because the founder, I think right now he runs another creative agency, and I still work with them. And they understood the user psychology really well, and they focused everything on creative. So these guys were thinking about creative when creative is not even a concept back in the days. So that taught me a lot of things. Then, as history would have it, from there, they got acquired. And then I jumped onto another company called Nanigans. Most of these guys who have been in media buying know. At Nanigans, I learned a lot about actual really buying media from using the data, how the feature-based model work, how the automated bidding works, all that good stuff. And that's also where I really got to hone in on my networking skills, as I would say it. So I spent a lot of the time it was a revolving door between Facebook and the Nanigans team, where the engineers openly discuss ideas and how to improve, because at that time Facebook was trying to improve the algorithm. So that kind of gave me behind the scenes as to how the AI, when they talk about AI, they're basically looking at data sets, how Facebook was leveraging their social graph and data they had in order to inform decisions on how the entire algorithm works. So I don't know whether most of you, the marketers, know this. Entire Facebook ecosystem is an auction-based model. So what I mean by that is, even an organic post you post is determined by the AI whether to show or not based on a scoring system, and that feeds the CPM. So for instance, you might think, hey, I made a post today that really went viral or got a lot of traction, and I made something else that did not get any traction. In the back end, that's how Facebook is organizing on your feed, if you're using a feed as a way. So that kind of allowed me to really understand how the sausage is made, put it directly. And from there, I went to work for another company called Machine Zone. So like one thing I will say is that I have been lucky many other times. I got to work with companies that were really forefront of marketing per se, rather than a followers. They were the leaders. At Machine Zone, which is a gaming company, that's where I learned the big game. That I went from thinking that, if I'm spending 150K a day is a big deal, to coming into a company that's looking at just like ours. They are like day traders. They know the CPMs of every platform, every publisher at any given time. We had this massive dashboard. It literally looked like NASDAQ when you came into their office, because they were at that time, if I remember correctly, spending about $1 billion, $1.5 billion a year on one mobile game. So if you guys are familiar with Game of War, Mobile Strike, where Arnold Schwarzenegger commercial, all of that, that's the company. And that allowed me to understand the ad ecosystem better. So at Nanigans, I learned how Facebook was working and how the intricacies of Facebook. But a lot of the business side in terms of scale, I learned at Machine Zone. And that was a good experience. I was there for a few years. Then, like every entrepreneur, I thought, maybe I will take a jab at being, do something on my own. Well, that didn't work out. I think the first year I lost like $1 million trying to promote a baby product that just did not sell. But I still learned a lot from that. And that time I had an opportunity to bring another Israeli media company. They needed to establish in the US. They were looking for a CMO. So I thought I can help them. So I was with them for a few months. I think I did about 9 months with them. And then I decided to take a break from media buying because, as anyone know, it's quite a stressful job. It doesn't matter whether you're spending 5K a day or whether you're spending $1 million a day. The stress is the same thing. Things break, clients break. Without going into details, Justin and I had a little bit of things last week. So it's a reality. And also I wanted to cut down on my travel. I was traveling a lot between Europe, Israel, and US. And my wife just had a baby. And as you guys probably parents know, it doesn't matter. You can be the big shot everywhere else, but at home, so at home, you need to show up. So I decided to take a break. And that time, this was about 3 years ago, I would say. That's the time that I just started consulting. It did not start as consulting, but I got involved with investors. I had a little bit of money that I had made over the years. And I was kind of pressure testing. I knew there was something to do with direct-to-consumer marketing. That time, D2C, the only few companies that I was familiar with, like Dollar Shave Club and a few others who were kind of doing this. So me and my partner, we were like trying to figure out whether we want to do D2C or we want to just, become an agency. But I knew in my heart, I didn't want to launch another agency. Like agency business, as we know, is very commoditized and we didn't want to do. So while we were doing that, we always get approached, in the circle, people know me. So they're like, hey, I invested a bunch of money in this company. They need help with the infrastructure, setup, launch, funnel building, all that. So that was my first thing, like about 3 years ago, like consulting. So I went from working for companies, buying media, trying to buy media my own, did not really work out. I didn't figure out the recipe properly. Then I started consulting. That allowed me to get a full 360 view of the ecosystem. And I was able to cherry pick where I really wanted to bet. And this is something really important for anyone who is in the media business as a brand to understand that, as cliche as it sounds, stay in your lane. Like there are things that you're really good at. Don't go chasing after shiny things. When you go to that, you're likely to lose money because you only see the final finished product outside. You don't never see what goes behind the scene. The only way you will learn what goes behind the scene is by working for that company and in being in the war room, making things work, right? So
where did you end up now then? So
yeah,
obviously you
so
got
very
tremendous amount
quickly,
of experience. Are you
so what we did was we started as consulting, and I quickly realized that I'm basically giving the blueprint for companies to become $1 million company or $1 billion company. Before that, I have already helped few companies go public, or at least run things at scale. So we wanted to figure out how can we impactful and what we wanted to do. And we want to do something that was fun. So we spun a company called Tryb Global. Initially, I put my own money in. And what we did was any company that I was advising or thought that had a potential, or some of my close network friends have invested, we became like a SWAT team. So we bring in the service. We basically analyze all their data. We actually put together the plumbing per se to launch whatever the brand they wanted to launch. And then we quickly realized there was something that's meaningful. And what I think the first year, we probably did about 15 million in revenue, because that time we were working with, if you guys remember, all the scooter companies were really scaling. So that was kind of the companies, either it's going to be, it was not 100% direct to consumer, but it was B2C. And in the B2C, we wanted to work with companies that has a potential to scale. When I say potential to scale, they have already figured out product market fit. They just needed, someone to come in and put the work in to scale, right? Plumbing work, measurement, all that. I put some slide together and I'll start sharing very quickly. That's how the whole operation started. And then as I was scaling, I'm like, okay, it's one thing to consult, it's one thing to sit in a room and advise, and I'll drop in, once a week, and half the things that we discuss is not even executed. So we realized it's one thing to have, like meetings like this and speak to people and tell them. It's another thing to actually show them how things work. So we came up with this accelerator model. Right now, in fact, Facebook actually made this into a course for their early adopters. It's basically a 12 to 18 weeks of real work. That means understanding the customer avatar, the measurement piece, what metrics that matters for you as a business, and then figuring out within Facebook what are the things that we need to do right in order to scale. And when I say scale, I'm talking about at least $1 million in media spend, a month, right? And I figured, I think someone had this question: how do you scale from, what do you do when you're doing 6 million versus 60 million or 100 million? If one single answer is the company that helps you or who is buying media and helping you get to $1 million, it's not going to be the same team or same discipline, the team that's going to take you from, 1 million to 60 million or 100 million. And why that is when you go from scaling to $1 million, you're actually getting out of the Facebook ecosystem itself. You had to make sure that your logistics are working. You had to make sure you have a steady stream of creative teams and branding teams that kind of working, 24/7, thinking about assets and all that things. So just sit there and thinking, hey, you can actually, use some method and scale to 100 million. It's not true. I think the methods and methodologies are great. It tells you something that you don't have to learn. It gives you an opportunity to jumpstart, but you have to come up with your own recipe. So the way I put together this 12-week plan for all these teams were, in my opinion, they will work because we had this wealth of information and understanding of the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But when I gave that to these direct companies, they literally wrecked it. I'll hear like text from the founders usually, hey man, my team blew through 300K and I don't know what they're doing. Okay, great. So let's come back, right? So that forced, no, I wouldn't say forced it. We decided at that point we wanted to create a core team. And I literally went and hired everyone that I know was a star in the last 20 years. So that was another question somebody asked, how do you build a team that can manage 600 million, almost close to $1 billion? Is that literally any head of marketing that I knew has run media in the last 20 years that were willing to not work for a company, want to do something on his own. And my pitch was, hey man, I got 20 million. I'm willing to give you 20 million. Do you want to play? Right. And usually those guys, anyone who's really like a hardcore buyer love the action and they want to buy. And that's how we put together the team. So our team is very agile. Each of them specialize in a certain discipline of marketing. Some of them are very good at customer market, like strategy. Some of them are very good executors when it comes to different channels. Some of them are great, I would call it conversational or creatives. They come up with these very innovative ideas. And then we have people who have run, they have worked for larger companies, larger brands, that are similar to the verticals that we are operating in. So they have a deep understanding of the full funnel, how it works. So that's my team. It's very dynamic. And then when we work with companies, we are still, I consider ourselves like a consulting team, right? We have, and it's very specialized. But when we work over time, what we're actually doing is we are training their internal people. We are helping them hire their first head of marketing. We are trying to help them hire the first creative director, all of that. And we're putting those disciplines in place. And typically our engagements last anywhere from, 9 to 12, 18 months maximum. We don't stay on an account. So that's another thing, because we have a finite amount of resources. We only work with about 8 to 10 maximum companies per year. Most of them don't even qualify to get accepted. So what I mean by that is, I think this is like any media buyer knows. If you're operating in an agency business or consulting, they come in within a week, they want results. If not, they bounce. What you as a marketer need to really understand is that the amount of work you put in and learnings you get, you don't really get to scale. I think Tim recently touched on that, right? Like first 3-4 months, any brand, you should tell them, hey, you're going to lose money. At minimum, you will break even. If someone comes to you and say, hey, I want a 1.5, 1.10 ROAS, tell them, hey, here's what we plan on executing. You can kind of give them a taste of what they can anticipate in coming months. You do want to be transparent about that. But also the reality is that if they haven't figured out product market fit, or if they haven't figured out how to communicate, the creative strategy, angles, all of that, that takes time. And when not only that, and on top of that, you're also working with logistic issues, and now with COVID, all the other supply chain issues, right? So
my biggest thing in the 13 years I've been doing this is where I've seen most people getting in trouble, especially in the agency business, is they make promises. They cash checks that their ass can't cash. So I get asked the question all the time, well, what's going to be my ROAS if I spend this and that? And my answer is, I'm not going to give you an answer, because it's going to ruin the relationship. You're going to come back to me after 3 months and you're going to remember when I told you I can hit 2x at 20K spend or 2x at $1 million spend, and you're going to hold that to me, and then it's just going to ruin the relationship going forward. So I personally, and I always advise everyone I talk to never set expectations, because it depends. Like you said, it depends on their customer service. It depends on their product. Depends on if they're responding to comments on Facebook. Like we have some brands that don't even manage their social media, and they get, people that will go on there and just rip the product. And it's like, you gotta, all that stuff affects what you do as a media buyer and running media for these companies. So I 100% agree.
I think the fundamental thing, media buyers too, and I understand everyone has to, put food on their table, and they get, you don't have that same level of deal flow like most of the established guys have. I understand that. But if you're a buyer, and if you're like, especially if you're starting an agency, I know it will sound very controversial. I will advise anyone starting an agency. You don't want to start an agency, because agency as a business, what you will realize is that after some time that you're not really adding value. And what I mean by that is you're more of an operator and you're trading your time for money, and that will never allow you to break free from what you need to do, right? So why I say that is you're essentially building the business for someone else. You're helping them get to a point, and then you had to rinse and repeat the same thing over and over again, and you're never really going to have traction. That's what I mean. There are big agencies in the enterprise world, and they work, but if you really look at the operating margin, it's very less. And they're it's like a revolving door, right? People hop from agency to agency. There are few stars. And I'm saying that because I have been on both end of the aisle. I have been an operator. I have been worked for brands, and I have been I have owned my own agency. Even people ask me, so what are you doing now? That's kind of an agency. Well, it's consulting, but the way our deal structures are not set up like an agency. So we are not operating on percentage of media spend. We are not operating based on, what we basically come in is indirectly. It's like you're hiring an expert setup team, and there's a price tag for that. And our contracts, and this is something I can openly talk about, we don't even take anyone under 6 months. We used to do some 3 months, and every time I've done that, I'm like, I don't want to touch this. The earliest thing is you had to make a 12-month commitment, even for us to just say, hey, whether we will consider you or not.
Can you talk about your minimums?
Minimums. So it's interesting. We have a philosophy. We want to work with people we like on projects we love. That's like our tag. What I mean by that is if you have a business, it's not predicated on the dollar. Like, if you're doing something that's a product that's socially conscious, a product that you think will have an impact in the space we are operating in, that's something interesting to me. And then I might get involved. Sometimes I might even, invest in the company. But if you're talking purely like a transactional relationship, then we expect them to at least spending, north of 5 million a month, so that we know that they just want to go from spending, 5 million a month is like 60 million a year. They want to go from there to like, 100, 200, 300 million, and they basically need help putting together infrastructure and teams. So it's a different type of engagement than like media buying, but like our media buying is anywhere float from like 1 million a month to 5 million, because anyone who's spending 1 million a month usually have a pretty good understanding of what's not working. So then I can actually say, okay, can I help fix that? 90% of the time, it's not what's happening inside the account, it's what's happening outside of the account. Sometimes they haven't really nailed the offer. They may have made 20, 30 million last year, but they still haven't really nailed the offer, or they maybe just one trick pony. They had one hero product that really scaled. Everyone get excited. They come up with 5, 10 different SKUs, and now they're trying to promote it, and they expect the same results. And I would say 90% of the time, it doesn't really work if you don't have the fundamentals right. Now, you have a higher chance of success rate because you have all this data. I think maybe this is a good way for us to kind of segue into how I think about marketing in general. Let me see if I can do
I'd like to try and save, I don't know how long this part will take you, but 15, 20 minutes just to rapid fire some questions at you.
Yeah. So let's do this. I look at the Holy Trinity of marketing. For me, it's these 3 things. As you guys can see, I don't even talk about tactics or anything here. You need to really understand your data. That means, who are you targeting? Who's your customer, right? End of the day, who's your customer? Where are they hanging out? And how do you, or what do they care about? That's what the data tells me. So whenever we are looking at a client, that's the first thing I look at, is to understand, have they even understand their core audience or customer avatar, and how many of them have they found, and where did they find them, and are they finding them in a very cost effective way that they can actually pay for the media? Because if you really think about it, at scale of things, every dollar you make, you're spending about 60 to 70 cents of that giving to Facebook or Google. That's the truth, especially at scale. So you have 30 cents on every dollar left to figure out, how to run operation, how to produce. So like that's something that people don't understand. Everyone get hung up on this ROAS, but what they don't really understand is like when you're trying to scale, when you break that barrier. Justin, I think you remember like a few months ago, I came and asked you, hey man, what's the average CPM you're seeing when you're breaking over 1 million, right? Because even though Facebook says it doesn't have a tax, I believe after a certain scale, you had to pay to play. And what I mean by that, every platform, every channel, when you scale, it's not your ads performance. It has nothing to do with anything you're doing. It just, they have a premium. And what I mean by that is there are these big agencies or big brands have booked Facebook, for a certain period of time, and that's their ceiling price. And if you want to play at that level, now you have to pay that and then some to compete, right? So that's what you will see when you go from 1 million to 2 million. You will see like within 3 days, you will see like a jump. Your CPM will go from like $50 to like 60, sometimes even $120 in the US. And that means whatever the category you're in, somebody else, another big dog is playing, and he's like, this part of the ocean is mine and I get to fish, and he owns it. There's nothing you can do to even break free from that, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that's important. The second part is once you know the user, where they hang out, now how do you effectively communicate to them? That's where the creative piece come in. I will say for most companies at the, even if you're as a media buyer, if you're really thinking about it operationally, creative is the best lever you have that can actually help you move the needle. What I mean by that is if you can figure out the viral factor, and I have some things I'll go through that later. If you can figure out what makes your creative tick, what makes your customers click on it, and they, it's like giving them crack, right? They click, 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 buy. If you can win every click, you have a better chance. If you can just spend $1 and make $1.10 or $1.50 in return, then you have that. So that's something that we talk about on the creative with my team. Then of course, measurement, right? Your ROAS is never your North Star. There's a single metric that helps you grow your business, and you have to understand what that metric is. Is it the number of subscribers? Is it the region marketing percentage of users that you are after, or is the type of user? Whatever the metric, you have to really understand the North Star, then figure out how you can execute at all levels to get closer to that North Star, and that's going to help you grow your business, right? So those are the three things I consider as Trinity of marketing. But again, different people will have different point of view, and I'm fine with that, but this is what works for me.
Couple questions on this slide for you. For data, for aggregation, and what do you guys use at the scale? Are you using GA? What does your data?
We have our own thing that we built on DaVinci. DaVinci is like a platform that Airbnb built, I'm going to say about 5-6 years ago. And it's open source. You can take it and build your own data pipeline. So we have our own internal system. I mean, we are always working with most of our clients typically have like a third party, measurement partner or something like Segment, Palantir, a few others are like things that I think has some really good piping to make it work. Anyone in between, I will test them, but usually it's a lot of smoke and mirror. They don't really have the underlying technology to scale. So I don't consider like platform. Think about platforms in this way. Whatever that's in the database, it's telling you informing you in a certain way, you can understand the data better, right? That's how I think about it. But something that we are doing differently, most marketers or agencies don't do, except one or two that I know firsthand, is we look at data not only as acquiring, but when we acquire a user, we enrich that user. What I mean by that is, if I found an email, all I care about is if I found an email, a phone number, an IP address, every time I see that email or phone number, I am putting additional information on top. So our data layer is a lot more rich than most agencies. So why is that important? I can upload a set of, if let's say I'm working with an alcohol brand and targeted towards millennial with certain characteristic, da da da. I can actually plug that data into, I will take their first part data, their CRM data, plug into our system, and immediately we can create subset of users based on the characteristic that matters to whatever the promotion we are doing. Then of course, it's rinse and repeat, right? You upload that into, pipe that into Facebook, build your lookalikes, boom, you're ready to go. So I think that gives us an advantage as opposed to going with, waiting for the pixel to populate or waiting for like interest targeting to work. Because think about it, right? Every time you're using something that exists in the ecosystem, you're competing with someone else. So interest group, I think with post iOS, interest targeting is going to become expensive again. Guess what? Because a lot of their people's pixel data is not going to be effective, and everyone is going to go old school. Now they're going to all create this like super targeted list and da 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 da. And what they're really missing is that you and 12 million other guys are going after the same thing, right? I swear to you, I have like a old email list, like I upload every time. And I bet you everyone who has worked for me have that email list, even though they claim otherwise. And I'm like, fine. But that's the nature of it. So that's something that we are doing different. And especially with the GDPR, and since GDPR came and with all the CCPA and all that, we also work with DSPs or data service providers or DMPs, data management providers, to enrich our data. So I don't know if Facebook is still doing it. Facebook used to have agreements with Axiom and few others where you can actually sign a deal where they will actually give you custom segment of users that you can go after. Yep. I know it exists for real money gambling and casinos because that's controlled media. So for instance, when we work with DraftKings, it's real money. So there are regulations around the different states and whatnot. And Facebook will actually upload a list that we can target because those are users who have said they are fine with getting these type of data. Now, of course, that has changed post Cambridge Analytica. So talking about data, that's how I see data, if that helps you. Mm-hmm. So one thing I wanted to kind of add here is that these are some of the companies I had the privilege of working in their early days. I'm sure most of you are familiar with, including TikTok. What I would say is that if you're a marketer really trying to understand a business, find someone who has already done this at scale and try to reverse engineer, try to understand how they are communicating their value proposition. Where are they buying media and how are they telling the story? And then try to understand, and that will give you a better shot as cracking the code than you just looking at some presentation I'm doing or someone else is doing and saying, okay, I'm going to come and deploy that method. I would say look at, let's say, if you're a small restaurant or delivery company, look at the delivery company that's actually in the market at executing at a high level, because they have already gone through the learning process to crack what's working. And then you can actually model after them and then execute on it, right? So that's one. Whether it's creative or data, that's something that I do. Even now, like I am on Facebook ad library. In fact, we have I'll think about it. Maybe Justin, you and I can talk about it, whether we want to make it available. We actually have a Facebook list of like advertisers on Facebook. We have curated over time. Every time they come up with a new ad, it's come into a system, because my creative team need to really stay on top of what's working. And that's the way for them to understand, okay, here's a company that's not only our competitor, but actually telling the story a lot more effective.
Mm-hmm.
And if they understand that, they can come up with a lot more 10 different ideas to tell the same story in a different angle that meets our goal, right? So that's something we can think about, creating a short list.
One question, I know we talked about this last week, is I know there's probably a couple people in here that are seeing this. Wish. We see the posts and ad bars all the time of the pictures of the ads they run. Can you talk to a little bit about, and I know you know what I'm talking about, but I'll keep it PG. Can you talk a little bit about how they get away with that?
So there is, if you're a large media spender, right? You can actually you can get whitelisted. I mean, that's a reality. Even now, before I came, I don't want to name companies, but they are in a very competitive market, and the ads were getting flagged. And basically, the conversation is, how do we get whitelisted? So what does whitelisting means is the AI looks for some generic trigger terms that will automatically ban, right? Let's talk about, if you're thinking about a weight loss product. If you say, I mean, not the blatant claim, hey, you're going to lose 10 pounds in 7 days. I mean, that's bullshit. Like, nobody can get whitelisted for that. But if you have a product that talks about personal attributes, or if you're talking about ads that are similar to the political campaign, you can actually upload all your disapproved ad IDs to Facebook, and they can actually whitelist you. So in the future, whenever you launch an ad, if that is the keyword there, it's already whitelisted, you will automatically get approved. So that's the name of the game. I'm not saying, everyone, I mean, it's end of the day, that's what it is. That's,
I mean, some of it is blatantly against terms of service, but I'm sure.
So like, let's talk about things I would recommend not to do, right? Don't ever buy account from other agencies. Like, think about Facebook as your bank account, right? And your social security number. You're better off getting a different bank account than you'll ever get a Facebook account. They are going to be a lot more stricter, strict when going forward. So I know, like, sometimes, I even flag up, sometimes people ping me and they're like, hey, I got this account. Do you want to buy or sell? Don't try to circumvent the system. Reach out to Facebook. It takes time, but what you're actually doing is you're building that relationship. End of the day, they are working for a company too. They have rules they had to follow internally. Otherwise, they get fired. They will lose their job. So don't go slamming the guys. Don't just send them a friendly note and say, hey, man, maybe I screwed up something. How can we figure it out? 90% of the time, they will try to help you. And this has held true it doesn't matter whether you're spending 10 million, 20 million, 100 million. End of the day, these are softwares. Sometimes their systems are not perfect, and they know that, and it breaks all the time. And the best way you can actually help yourself is communicating. Open the communication, maintain the line of communication with the teams, and say, hey, man, my account got disapproved for this reason, and can we figure it out? And even if they come and say, nope, keep at it. But instead of, if you go and buy another account, and if you try to do, what happens is that eventually that will catch up to you. And then you're like, now you're playing, whack-a-mole with Facebook, and you're never going to grow a business. And that's going to give you more gray hair. And that's coming from a guy who used to buy 20,000 text, phone IDs and pay prepaid cards and run Google ads. That's not that doesn't work anymore. I mean, it still works, but it's short term, I would say. So I'll quickly do you have another question around policies? No. Okay.
No, I just, I know that was probably, there's people thinking that with Wish, because I see it all the time. So
yeah. So Wish, think about, I don't want to go into details, but the way is that it's pay to play. They are one of the innovators or early adapters on Facebook. So sometimes you do see like companies like Coinbase, which is in the crypto, or someone like DraftKings are able to advertise on Facebook, but no other money gambling can run on Facebook. That's because Facebook went and sought them out as a new, they call it disruptor categories. These are companies similar to Spotify and all that grew on Facebook. So Facebook actually see them as a new category they can establish, and they will do a lot more of that. So I don't know if you guys were recently on the Clubhouse chat where Zuck was openly talking about their partnership with Shopify, because they understood, Facebook understand D2C is going to be the future of retail commerce. And they are partnering with Shopify. And I think they may have I think they're already testing a bunch of things, but Facebook will have a full-fledged e-commerce part of their platform integrated into, if you guys think about like almost like early days of gaming, if you guys remember, Zynga and all actually built on Facebook platform. And so Facebook is trying to do that for commerce as well. Any other question around that?
Oh, let's jump into the next one.
So this is, I think it's kind of generally for a lot of if you have worked with any agency or any capacity, you probably know this method. It's nothing new. It's like the century-old approach. But how we think about it is that your creative storytelling, you have to really hit all these 3 points or 4 points per se. So as I said, when you look at a customer, I don't look at them as a conversion number. I actually look at this as a person who was interested in something that I was saying, took the action, clicking on the action, and then they vote. So when I dissect that, I look at, if it's a video ad, I look at 3-second view per impression, so the percentile. So on average, let's say your 3-second views are around 20%. That's not good. That means 80% of the people who are interacting with the ad is not resonating. So the first thing, when you look at any creative, don't look at the entire creative and say this creative is not working or this creative is working. Look at least these 3 or 4 metrics, right? So the reason I put ROAS here is that 90% of the marketers I know, they look at ROAS, including my team sometimes. They look at conversion, ROAS, and they're like killing ads prematurely. The way I look at it is that holistically, did I win or did I interest that customer that I was trying to tell the story? So if you think about Facebook as the wide blue ocean, right? In that ocean, your ad is your net, right? What are the fishing net or the line you're using? Your ad is going to help you find the right type of customer. So if I'm fishing for a bluefin tuna, right, I'm not going to put a small, hook. That's not going to catch my big fish, right? I need to have the right hook, and I need to fish at the right area of the ocean, right? If I go to some corner of the ocean, I'm looking for food, tuna is not going to come, right? So that's how you should think about it. Who do you want to find? Who's the ideal customer? Where are they hanging out? And what do you show them that will captivate that attention of their user? So that's the first part. The first part is the 3-second view attention that tells you. If it's a static image, I call it thumbs up, that essentially either save or share. It used to be clicks per impression or use CTR, but now I look at Facebook values, shares per impression or saves per impression. So that kind of gives you the viral factor about when you're looking at. So that's the first metric I look at. If that's above average, so you pull your entire account, you look at these 3 metrics, right? Attention, the interest, that's the average watch time, or the outbound CTR, and look at your baseline, and then score each pieces of your ad based on that. So if your baseline is, let's say 38%, right? I'm just making this up. And you have one ad that, scores above baseline on all 3. That's your percentage is like 46%. average watch time is, let's say, 15 seconds, and the outbound CTR is like 1.2 something, right? And then that's, you give that ad A grade, right? Or whatever you want to mechanism you want to use. Then if an ad is not working, then what I try to look at it is like, which one of these metric is not working. So if 20% of the users are dropping off, or 3-second view or less, like only 10%, then I will only try to fix that piece of the video. So opening hook, maybe whatever I'm showing is not resonating with my audience, and I'll try to change that. If that's working, but my outbound CTR is below average, that's usually an end card. So for those who don't know what an end card is, that's a call to action you have at the end of the video, or whatever the call to action you have. So by testing different call to action and inviting the user to take action, usually help you improve. The average watch time, or the interest in the middle, it's relative to what you're looking at. So if you have a 60-second video and really understand what's going in the middle, that keeping the user engaged. So after the 3rd-second view, if you look at the graph, will see where people are dropping off, then break each of that frame. I believe, I'm forgetting his name. I think Max did a detailed view of how he thinks about creative. It's the same principle. You break each of your ad into frames, and look at where people are dropping off, and interchange that frame. By interchanging the frame and telling a holistic story, that extends the view time. I have never seen view time makes a massive difference. It actually qualifies the user better, so you get a good quality users. But the attention and the outbound CTR typically are the 2 levers that we can pull. That will actually help your ad go viral. So that's something that I pay attention to. So I gave you guys a quick example underneath. Let's say if I'm running a fertility drug for like a females, I'm basically like, who am I targeting? Like that's like a woman in their 30. Where is she hanging out? She's probably looking at consuming the content in like Instagram feed, and then she is struggling with fertility. So I'll try to tell the story in a way that speaks to just her. And the same thing if I'm looking at I'm targeting a man. I'll look at, okay, he's probably in his 30s, and this time he's consuming the video, whatever, in a Facebook article, and his typical problems are like around ingrown hair and razor burns or whatever, like dating, right? So like I'll try to find that commonality and then create the content that speaks to them. So that's the creative model. Because someone had a question, if I remember, what's my creative strategy? This is my creative strategy. Every agency that we work with, both internal, external, we work with different creative agencies. They get educated on this. This is how they know that I'm qualifying whether they are creating us high caliber content or not. And as we decide to get into long-term contract with them, this is basically we use as baseline to decide whether we.
What is your budget split for like when you're scaling up between awareness versus conversion? On average,
in the early stage, if I don't have enough data, and if you're going after the wide ocean and trying to understand where the fish is, it's typically, I would say, 70-80. 70-30. That means 70% of his prospecting and just kind of like net new users, and then 30% is like warm audience retargeting and whatnot.
Are you optimizing always for conversion, or how much of your media?
I actually have I will end of this call, I'll drop in, I'm going to drop in what I call Daisy chain method. It's basically a full funnel. Okay. So it depends. So top of the funnel up until, and this is also Facebook has changed, right? Yeah. I would say up until maybe January of this year, conversion optimization, even at 100 million users, the pixel AI was pretty good at finding. in the last 2 months, though, some of my big clients, I am actually optimizing to landing page view, because I feel like if I can get the user, and this is again, it's unique for each account. It's unique for your funnel. You have to really have your funnel tight, because we know any user who drops in or even accidentally clicks on an ad, they are in our system, and I know a lot about them, and then I can put them in the right group and segment them where they need to be in order for me to push. So think about is that first touch, if you guys remember, like my tickle my pixel method, that's the idea. The idea is that the users are all over, and you can either take an approach to go after the users who are in market, who are ready to buy, or you're going to warm an user, educate them over time, and then convert them. Right. Early stages, when I'm looking at data, I'm going after the immediate users who are in market. But my long-term strategy is always is, if I have 110 million addressable market, how do I speak to each level of user and what matters to them, and how do we convert them over time? So that's how I think about. So sometimes I might even just do 70% retarget. So during holiday season, and I have a slide on that, why you don't want to acquire customers during holiday season. During holiday season, we don't acquire customers. And this is like everyone jumps on holiday season and get excited. I don't acquire customers, or try not to acquire customers, unless I really have to. Like leading up to like October, starting October, I'm all about retargeting. At this point, I have enough users that we have acquired in the leading up to that time, and now it's all cross promo, and I'm not even going after the net new users at that point.
Yep, we see pretty good lift by doing any like new media that we're going to put in. We always launch traffic landing page views first, always a few hours before our conversion campaigns, because like you said, getting that engagement in the auction, that's what determines your deliverability up front. And we've seen pretty good lift by doing that.
Yeah. And I also think, and again, this is still experimental, so I want to give people, and I don't want you guys losing money. I think Facebook's pixel data, if you don't already have pixel that's really warm and Facebook has a ton of history, I think Facebook's pixel may be less effective than it used to be going forward, because it has less features to optimize towards. And what I mean by feature is that if you take a user, like if you take me, Facebook knows my buying habit. Facebook knows how often I'm logging into my phone, what time of the day I'm logging in, all of that information. Going forward, let's say I switch my phone to a new device, my device ID has changed. So Facebook is actually losing that set of data that it knows about my behavior, and it has a reset. And when it resets, it's rebuilding that. So if it already has history, and if I kind of load my app, Facebook app, it has some history and it'll build off of that. But that calibration time will impact whatever the historical data you have in your pixel, because now the device ID have changed or email have changed. I don't know what percentage or how that will impact the overall buying strategy for us, but we are anticipating at least 20 to 30% of our users will be impacted, because on average, we see about 20 to 30% of our users are early adapters. That means these are the guys who has with disposable income, but they are also the guys who switch phones. Every time there's a new phone drop, they jump onto that one. So whenever they update their phones, I'm not buying media, because I want Facebook to wait and then come back and say, okay, Rishi switched his phone. Now Facebook has enriched his data. Now I have an email that I can connect to him to, and then I'll go from that.
Right. Question on that. This is the $1 billion question. Can you season a pixel, or do you season an ad account?
Seasoning an ad account.
Yeah, okay.
What I mean by that is pixel, yes. Pixel, think about it, like pixel is like hooks that Facebook has all over the web, and it's collecting data.
Yeah.
But the pixel doesn't store data a long time. Your account actually has way more information. So, and then that kind of goes into campaigns and ad sets and all the things.
Right.
So account history matters. So sometimes we do test this where if I have an account that's calibrated to, women in the US, 80% is women market, then the same brand came up with something they're targeting men, and my CPMs are like high and I can't even get traction. I may just test the same pixel, but in a different account targeting men and try to see if I get a lower CPM. Because what happens is that your account history influences your flow pricing in Facebook. I have heard different argument with that, but at least my experience has been that sometimes my accounts will, like, I'm spending $1 million a day and I can't even get traffic, and I'll fire up another account, same pixel, boom.
Yep.
And so that's the reality.
I stopped your screen share because you're probably wondering, just so we could get some content for
okay, no worries.
Cut it up, but you can reshare if you're wondering.
Okay.
Screen stop share.
So this is some strategy that I'm doing that's different than most marketers. Is I create any brand we are working with, we create our own product drops. And what I mean by that is that we are creating our own Black Friday. That's a simple way I will tell you. So we prime our customers saying, hey, we are coming up with a new product. We are about to drop, build up the hype, get them on a waiting list. And then we will release. And when we release the product, we are giving them 20 or 30% off just to get them excited. And indirectly, what I'm also doing is that I'm priming my users to really pay attention to sales. This is like a very common habit or thing that I have seen with users. They'll give you the email and they care about deals. So don't ever run, like, I wouldn't say like don't ever run evergreen deals. You can run evergreen deals, but you don't want to become, Home Depot or one of these things, right? Where they predict you. So they don't even buy. They will wait for a President's Day sale or some sale because they predict that when you're going to throw a sale. But if you do the opposite, where you never have a deal and all of a sudden you throw a deal, people will jump on it. So so we kind of use a reverse psychology there. What we do is that throughout the year, we look at certain peaks. So we know that Mother's Day are coming and people are likely to spend a lot of money. And we also know that Mother's Day, a lot of the media will go up because every company is going to pump money targeting Mother's Day. So what we will do is that we already start building our email list for Mother's Day offer now. I think we typically start Mother's Day the day after February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. So any fashion brand, anything we are working with, or any DTC brand, we are building a list. And we are looking for people who are likely to buy gifts, and they're on our mailing list. And then week prior to Mother's Day, we will start do daily drops. And it doesn't have any offer. We will not do 20% off, 30% off, or any of that. There's no incentive, but it's exclusivity. I have found exclusivity goes a long way than deals. Yes, people will still buy deals, but people who buy exclusive offers has a higher LTV, and that's something that we noticed. So think about it this way. Someone who doesn't buy throughout the year, if they are buying on holiday, their motivation is different. They are typically buying because they want to give a gift. But if you run ad where they actually see the value in your product, and that user is likely to stay and buy more from you over and over again. And this is why you see like big high-end brands never have a sale. You never see them. They may have a clearance section, but they will never, you don't see Ferrari going on a sale. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah.
Why? Because the perceived value is high. So even if you're doing a drop shipping or whatever, right, you can actually build brand and the perceived value of your brand. And you will see that more people are willing to pay for it because in their head, your brand is worth 10x more than the same guy selling the same product. This is why you see like, certain established brands, people will pay more money, even the same quality of the product, D2C coming, people who are saving money will buy, but not everyone is buying, right? The second part is, so what we look at is throughout the year, you can actually find this pretty much everywhere on the web. these clearing houses put these metrics from previous years. And as you guys can see, this was like the retail of 2020, how it was projected. So we know start Thanksgiving that we were on average, we're going to see about 35% growth in the year. So we started not compete in that period, and we started pre-gaming and literally bringing everyone into our funnel throughout the year. And then I believe around October, we stopped acquiring new customers. And then since October until end of January, we just focused on remarketing to our existing users. So this is another way you want to think about. This is also another interesting way to think about when you're trying to scale. You're buying data and you're not buying customer. And what I mean by that is each data points you're acquiring throughout the year is valuable data. Keep it stored away from Facebook, and then enrich that data. What I mean by is that email, phone numbers, any permutation that you can understand about the customer, keep that in a database. And then every time you want to launch, that's what you use. So this will go back to your seasoning pixel. I don't season the pixel, I season the emails. So every time I think about it, I'm very quickly to acquire emails. And once I get the email, I can model a lot of things and then go from there.
I don't season pixels either. I just obviously they're posted in the group a lot. So.
I think I understand why that, because Facebook didn't do a good job explaining what the pixels seasoning means. I think they just kind of took a shape of its own. Yeah. What Facebook is saying is that, hey, you got a new ad, and if you try to spend $1,000 a day, it's not going to work because they don't have enough data on you on your account. So that's what I think seasoning pixel came. I call it warming up the account. What I will do is that whenever I start a fresh account, I start running PPE campaigns or engagement campaign, purely content. We do a lot of micro content, like we have 15 seconds, 5 seconds video hooks, like throughout the accounts and building the brand, especially on Instagram. Like a lot of our budgets, just to kind of give some people numbers, 5% of our budget typically goes into building Instagram portfolio. Yep. And we think about all these assets we are building as portfolio for a brand. Sure. So on Facebook, TikTok, wherever, we are not buying followers, but we are putting enough content that speaks about our brand. So anytime someone sees, they will know. So this is the example, if I'm using Airbnb or even Wish, right? When you see an ad, without even knowing what it is, it's a Wish ad. Why is that? Because they have primed you for the last 3 years, showing you the most outrageous thing, and it's a Wish ad. So we try to do the similar ones like Instagram or wherever, and that's where the curated content is even more valuable, is that people understand who you are. Then all of a sudden, your brand itself become an influencer. So you're trend setting what people should be buying, right?
How does your ad account? Do you guys test multiple ad accounts at that level, or do you keep everything in one?
I typically have, I would say, maybe 3 to 4 accounts, ad accounts per client. We always have one hero account. The other ones are like either testing or backups. Some accounts we had to have multiple accounts, multiple pixels, because the budgets, the client's P&L are different. So some of our clients I work with are global brands. So they have different companies, region managed by different regional managers. So we had to, like, for the accounting purposes, but typically about 3 accounts is what we go.
How do you deal with cross account duplication?
So the way we think about it is that, I think someone asked me this question yesterday. We use the same pixel, and each of the ad objective or the purpose of account is different. So think about, you have multiple race cars in a race. Your hero car is always going to be the one primed to go. But the reality is sometimes accounts get shut down, some bullshit happens. But so I have the other race cars lined up, ready to go. That's one. The other one is we also split based on influencer marketing versus direct marketing, internal teams. So we have accounts that's dedicated only for onboarding different influencers. and testing, because our budgets are a little different and the strategy is different. So we will have multiple accounts. One account is running all paid media. It has a backup account if something to happen with that account, or like A/B testing, we will use another account. And I understand that people worry about overlaps a lot, and Facebook kind of flags everything as overlap. And even if you go compare like this audience versus this audience, if you look at the overlap, you will see like 90% or 30% overlap. That's a reality. I am marketer. Like the more ads I want you to see my ad literally every time you open the phone. The only way that I'll stop serving you an ad is if you bought the product within the time period, I think. So why I say that is, think about like TV commercial. Why do you think that people buy, Toyota or Honda or whatnot? Because they come over the years to understand that's a brand, even though they are not in market right now. And actually, like, we'll segue into this.
Also want to be respectful of your time, so let's do
so that's what I'm
minutes.
quickly jumping. I think I'll use this as a way to educate or talk about. You guys see me doing this pyramid style explanation a lot. This is what I use for Tickle My Pixel as well. So most marketers make the mistake of focusing in this 1% of the users. So when you today go into Facebook and put conversion optimization for purchase, what you're telling Facebook is you only care about the user who is in market today, who is willing to buy, right? And that's why you see your frequency goes up. Facebook doesn't even go outside of your account, outside of this cohort of people that it thinks, because you're telling the algorithm the outcome you want is a purchase. And by doing that, you're actually doing a disservice. What you should be thinking about is that if you look at your entire market holistically, there are people who may not be, they have different problems, and there are different things that will trigger them to buy. So if you look at the top 1%, they are not sensitive to price. They are early adapters. They're willing to try everything new, and they are willing to pay. So if you're selling 125 plus product, you will see that's what the percentage of the users that you can go after, and it's very small. But that doesn't mean you can't find different ways to sell it to the same user. And I'll use this like right now everyone knows that Afterpay and all these things, why it's taking over is that there are people who can't afford to pay $125, but if you give them an offer they can't refuse. That means you make a no-brainer offer, as I call it. Hey, $6, subscribe for it. You pay over the next 5 weeks, 10 weeks, or even 2 months, and they will buy. So the way we segmented it is throughout the data, we noticed $125 products typically is only like a tip of the market. The rest of the 2%, they are buying now, they're in market, but they are little value conscious. So they are basically comparison shopping. They're looking around, they're looking at other brands. Their trigger point is $65 to $70. Anything above, they will not buy. They will try to wait for a sale. The rest of the 17% of the market is typically price conscious. They're still researching. They are looking for third-party validation. So here's where you can show a lot of social proof, customer testimonial type, and their sweet spot is $45 to $50, right? And the others are like hype. That means FOMO. They will buy, but they are looking for others to buy first. They're kind of the late majority, as I call it. And for them, you can actually do like a hype videos. If you're like a beauty brand, you can do like a beauty routine, influencer kind of thing that will get them to buy. But 60% of the market, any brand, is customer is not in market. They are not interested in buying, but they will like passive buyers, as I call them. And you need to have something that will make it impulse buy, right? So if you have a $50 product, but if you say, hey, try this for $1, boom, they will buy. Because no-brainer, right? Yep. So one thing that we have found is, at least for our D2C brands, That's how we think about how we want to scale to $100 million, right? If I go and focus and come and tell you, hey, I'm going to get you 1.7 ROAS or spending $1 million a month, this is where I will be. I will never scale. But if I want to do 60 million or 70 million, ARR in media and want to drive 100 million in revenue, then this is how we segment the user base. And then we try to understand, are they price conscious? Do they need to be educated more? Or are they waiting for third-party validation? And then we'll show those users the right amount. So for those who are interested, like especially if you're starting with small budgets, I think it's easy to get approved by Afterpay. If not, Klarna is pretty good at up and coming. Or you can also use ClearBank. So ClearBank, those who are not familiar, they will actually give you credit at a 6% finance based on your current sale, right? Not sale, what do you call
revenue?
Your in revenue, right? So you can actually scale ahead of time, and then you're only giving up 6 points on, so it's free money in my opinion.
Yep. One thing that's you were talking about Instagram, something that's working really good for us right now. We started testing is running actually conversion purchase to Instagram profile page. We're actually seeing better ROAS with that than on straight conversion.
Try running like traffic ad to Instagram stories. That for me is like when I have no data, like if I want like cheap inventory but super targeted, but you need to really have like a really good quality creative, but run Instagram stories, traffic ad like really works well even for us at scale. Like I can easily drop like 50K a day on Instagram story and profitably. One quick thing, the takeaway I really want people to focus is that don't focus on ROAS. ROAS is a limiting factor, but focus on LTV. If you really understand the lifetime value of your customer, you can actually compete at a level that nobody else can. So for instance, I think Tim or someone may have touched on it early days, that when we look at a user, we think how much that user is worth to a business over the next 2 months, next 3 months, next year, for the lifetime of that customer. And now I can afford to compete at a higher level and buy. And when you actually pay premium on Facebook specifically, you're actually getting the high quality of the user. For instance, recently I was auditing an account and the buyer was optimizing based on ROAS, and it's a subscription business. I was like, dude, when you look at D7 ROAS, what's D7 mean? Day 7-day ROAS. When you're looking at the ROAS, someone is buying a one-time purchase, because for that particular client, if they subscribe, they get a 10% off.
Yep.
So when you look at a small window, you're like, oh, this guy. So you're going after users who are buying the product just for once. But if you focus on users based on how or type of users who are staying past D7, then that's a quality user, because he's likely to stay around in the network much longer. So even though they may drive lower ROAS month 1 or day 7 or whatever their break-even period for you, long term they are a high value user.
I think a lot of the problem is cash flow for people switching from a ROAS to
that's what I tell them, that you should look into something like ClearBank or even like Afterpay type, because now you can break even and still afford to keep spending media, because that you're getting paid anyway. You're just giving a couple of, instead of giving Facebook the 6 or 10% more on media, you're giving that to a bank.
Yep.
So unless there are some questions, I can go. This is something we are doing, and I'll post more details later on. But before that, any questions around this?
Nope.
So this is more people who really care about tactical stuff than. So we started noticing that throughout since last October leading up to January, that I looked at all our spend. Last year we did 600 million in media. So we looked at all of that and we realized no matter how often, and last year was a spectacular year because most people were home and they were buying stuff. That's what, like, if you look at May, June of last year, like everyone was minting money. But what I noticed is that Facebook still, even if you put like 100 million or 200 million, you're targeting like users, Facebook still only stayed behind a certain cohort of users. And this kind of, when it kind of into my view of like Facebook, when you do conversion optimization, Facebook is only going to go after users what it thinks are in market, right? So the way, in order to reach a wider audience, but also profitably, the way it's working is, and I'm calling it the daisy chain, is that the idea is that it's a CBO campaign and your full funnel is in the same CBO. And what I mean by that is top of the funnel, retargeting, and bottom of the funnel all in the same. And I'm using cost cap to distribute budget. So for instance, top of the funnel, I'm telling Facebook, this is the maximum I'm willing to pay for this type of audience optimized for conversion. And then if they fall into the funnel, they get put into, so if they buy, they get, let's say it's an add to cart, then that's a positive signal. I will let them go through. But if they did not put add to cart, but saw the video, maybe the 3-second or 50-second or whatever that matters to you, they get put onto a different ad set. And this ad set is optimized for either landing page view or conversion in the same campaign. I know not all accounts will allow you to do different type of optimization, but in CBO, in some accounts, Facebook still allows that. So if it doesn't allow you to do it in the same account, do it in a different CBO. But if it allows you to do, and how I qualify the users is I use a UTM parameter to only show ads to the users who have seen my ad. So you do like a UTM, get the campaign ad set ID and pass that ad set ID as a qualifier, and then that user gets put into the second ad set. Then if they take the desired action, which is add to cart or subscribe or complete a survey, they get to move through the funnel. If they don't, then I know that I need to retarget the users with a different value proposition. So let's say if you're if you're selling shaving cream and the user saw the video, engaged, but he added a cart but still not buy. So typically if they added a cart and did not buy, that either the option I gave them was not interesting or the price point or some other blocker. So I'll try to hit them with a sweeter deal. It's a quick 15-second video with a one-time offer. But because I'm limiting the users by UTM parameter, I'm only serving that to the users who have seen the ad first. So think about it's like a sequential ad, top of the funnel ad, branded, hyper value, broad terms. As they go down the funnel, not only my messaging changes and the offer changes, but also the optimization feature changes. So for instance, either I will optimize to a landing page. If I'm optimizing, if I have a ton of traffic coming in, then I'll optimize to like an add to cart, or I'll optimize to initiate checkout or something like that. And if it's subscription, I'll optimize to like a registration, start registration or something like that, and then try to get them in the funnel. This is working pretty well right now for us. And I'm getting like almost, my CAC is like 1/3 of what I would do on a regular scaling campaign. So which means your ROAS eventually backs out. Yeah. So the things to remember is CBO, cost cap. Each ad set has a different cost cap to find what the sweet spot for you. And your intent, the objective you're optimizing towards can be conversion optimization, but towards a landing page view, or conversion optimization towards registration or something like that, a different event, but all remain in the same container. And typically I don't go more than 4 or 5 ad set. 3 is my best. Some of my larger campaigns that I'm spending like 100K a day only have two ad sets. One is broad, doesn't target anything. or like 10, 20, 30 million users, interest targeting or whatever stack I have. Then the second ad set is retargeting. And the retargeting anyone who saw my ad in the first ad set, and that just runs that funnel. And then if I want to run a different strategy, I'll launch the same thing, different CBO, and I'll scale.
Makes sense.
Any other questions?
Mm-mm.
Sometimes I do apologize. I tend to talk fast, so me had to.
I mean, we could sit here and BS all day. I have tons of questions, but I know that you're a very busy man, so I want to be respectful of your time. So.
No, feel free to ask me if anything. That's I want to make sure anyone who asked question that was relevant to this, I'm happy to answer them. I can.
Let me see if there's anything in the chat real quick. Hold on. It runs behind too, so
yeah,
that's part of the problem. Now it just switched over to daisy chain, so they haven't even seen all this yet. So yeah, because it's a couple minutes behind. There was a question for how much do you bid for cost cap? 1x, 2x, 10x, typically. Like
great question. I think so. I was testing. So what's working now is if I'm confident in my funnel that I know I can afford to pay 5x, I would bid 5x just to get traffic. Then I will lower 10%, 5% until Facebook stops serving traffic. So that's one tactic. Again, these are tactics. These are not strategy.
Yeah.
The other thing is incremental. So I will have 3 ad sets. One ad set I am bidding on AOV. So if your average order value is $75, I'm bidding $75. Then I will have 2x and 5x, and then see which one Facebook is favoring, and then I will try to work with that.
Yep.
And when I'm doing cost cap, I'm not turning off ads. So that's a common mistake if you're a marketer. Facebook is need at least, even at our level of spend, 72 hours to optimize for an ad. So you may bid at a cost cap $75, but day one, your ad is one ad ate all your budget and spend $200 with one conversion. Do not kill that ad. What that ad is doing, it's informing Facebook what other ads to test, and then it can come back. Eventually, it will come to the cost cap amount that you have put. But I'm noticing on average, it's taking about 3 to 4 days before it settles.
Okay.
So do not kill any ad. Once you launch an ad into an ad set with a cost cap, feel free to put extra ads into that. But anytime you introduce a new ad, understand it's going to learn, re-inform and learn. So I have seen different people do different things. I have a tendency to start high, and then over time I will tighten my cost cap and get to the point of profitability.
Yep.
There are others who start small and they will increase. I advise against that, because now what you're doing is that you're almost operating like a bid cap,
Yep.
right? So if you still don't know what your sweet spot is, test it on bid cap. Then once you know your basis numbers, come to cost cap. If you don't know any of that, just start with auto bid, small budgets, the classic way of testing. But cost cap is pretty stable for us throughout all the accounts right now.
Okay. Last question, then I'm going to call this because we'll go forever. Are you optimizing a top funnel for conversion or video view?
I do both. So for clients that has a ton of historical data or doesn't know, but really care about scale, we are basically buying eyeballs at this point. So it's all optimized for video view, because I know, like I remember that I said, Facebook is a wide ocean. I'm using different size of nets and hooks to find the users. And that time I'm using purely video view. And I let my creative talks to the value proposition to the customer, and eventually I can convert them. But if I am starting new and I'm still trying to understand product market fit, then I'm using conversion optimization as a way to tell Facebook inform me what it thinks the right price or right user. So I do both.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, man. I know you're a super busy guy, very successful. So we really
thanks, guys. I will see 2 follow-up things. I will see if I can do a detailed video on the Daisy chain if anyone who is interested. The other thing that I think a couple of people ping me and ask me is that, the access to the creative library, maybe like we can coordinate later.
Yeah, we can coordinate after. I have a question for you anyways, so we can jump on.
All right.
Also, please be respectful of his time. I mean, I don't want hundreds of people DMing him. So
no, I don't. I know, like, I get a lot of friends, and again, it's nothing against anyone. Just understand, like, if I'm not in buying media, I'm not making money. So that is even true for me. So as much as I like to help and learn, I don't add anyone unless I really know you guys as friends. So I know I got ton of friend requests. Just I don't do that. But if you have any questions, just ask on the group. That's the best way to get answers from me. And that's also, like, helps others, right? Others may have the same question, so I can answer one person and others can pick from there.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
No problem. Cheers, man.
We will
Thank
get
you.
this up in the vault.
Good luck.
Yep. Bye.